Human grants alien girl a free ride, but her thank you catches him off guard. The sleek, silver hover bus glided smoothly through the bustling streets of Neo-Tokyo, its advanced propulsion system barely making a sound. Inside, Steve Reeves, the young human driver with tousled brown hair and a hint of stubble, drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, his blue eyes scanning the road ahead. It had been a slow day, with only a handful of passengers scattered throughout the bus. Another day, another credit, Steve muttered to himself, stifling a yawn. He'd been driving this route for months now, and while he enjoyed the solitude and the opportunity to people watch, he couldn't help but feel like he was meant for something more. As the bus approached the next stop, a striking figure caught Steve's attention. A beautiful humanoid alien woman with silvery blue skin, vibrant orange hair, and piercing blue eyes stood at the curb, her slender form draped in a form-fitting black dress that accentuated her curves. She hesitated for a moment before stepping onto the bus, her movements graceful and fluid. Steve felt his heart skip a beat as he watched her approach, her presence commanding the attention of everyone on the bus. He straightened his posture and adjusted his uniform, suddenly self-conscious of his appearance. The alien woman approached the payment terminal, a look of confusion spreading across her delicate features. She patted her pockets and searched her small purse, but to no avail. Realizing she didn't have the fare, she let out a frustrated sigh and turned to leave. "Just my luck," she muttered under her breath, her voice like honey and silk. Steve, unable to take his eyes off the stunning creature, found himself speaking before he could stop himself. "Hey, miss. It's all right. You can ride for free." The woman paused, her blue eyes widening in surprise. "Really? Are you sure? I don't want to cause any trouble." Steve flashed her a charming smile, his confidence growing. "No trouble at all. It's off-peak hours and there's plenty of room. Consider it a small act of kindness in this crazy universe." A grateful smile tugged at the corners of her full, peachy lips. "Thank you so much. You're very kind, especially for a human. Most alien drivers wouldn't dare break the rules like this." As she made her way to a seat near the front, Steve couldn't help but admire the way her dress hugged her curves, the fabric shimmering under the soft light of the bus. He cleared his throat, trying to focus on the road ahead, but his mind was racing with thoughts of the beautiful alien woman. "Well, I like to think we humans have a bit of a rebellious streak in us," he said, his voice smooth and confident. "Sometimes it pays off to bend the rules for a good cause." The alien woman chuckled, a melodic sound that sent a pleasant shiver down Steve's spine. "Is that so? And what might this good cause be, mister?" Steve Reeves," he replied, meeting her gaze in the rearview mirror. "And the cause is making sure a lovely lady like yourself doesn't have to walk in those killer heels." She laughed again, crossing her long, shapely legs. Tyraxis, Lezerel. "And I must say, Steve Reeves, you certainly know how to charm a girl." As the bus wound its way through the city, Steve and Tyraxis fell into easy conversation, their light flirtation filling the air with a palpable electricity. They talked about their lives, their dreams, and the challenges of living in a universe where humans and aliens coexisted. "So what brings you to Neo-Tokyo, Tyraxis?" Steve asked, genuinely curious about the beautiful alien woman. Tyraxis smiled, a hint of mystery in her eyes. "Oh, just exploring the universe one city at a time. I've always been fascinated by human culture, and Neo-Tokyo seemed like the perfect place to start." Steve nodded, impressed by her sense of adventure. "Well, you've certainly come to the right place. Neo-Tokyo is a melting pot of cultures, both human and alien. There's always something new to discover here." "And what about you, Steve?" Tyraxis asked, leaning forward in her seat. "What's your story? What dreams keep a handsome human like you driving a hover bus?" Steve felt a blush creep up his neck at her compliment. "Oh, just trying to make my way in the universe. I've always had a love for adventure, but I guess I just haven't found my big break yet." Tyraxis smiled, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Well, you never know when that big break might come knocking. The universe has a funny way of surprising us." As they continued to chat, Steve found himself drawn to Tyraxis's quick wit and infectious laughter. She had a way of making him feel like he was the only person in the world, and he couldn't help but wonder what it would be like to spend more time with her. All too soon, the bus approached Tyraxis's stop. She rose from her seat, a hint of reluctance in her movements. Well, this is me. Thank you again for the ride, Steve. It's been an absolute pleasure. As she passed by the driver's seat, Tyraxis paused, a mischievous glint in her eye. Before Steve could react, she leaned in close and gave him a quick, sensual lick on his cheek. The feeling of her warm, soft tongue against his skin sent a jolt of electricity through his body, leaving him momentarily stunned. "A little token of my appreciation," Tyraxis purred, her voice low and seductive. "Until we meet again, Steve Reeves." With that, she winked and sauntered off the bus, her hips swaying hypnotically as she disappeared into the crowded street. Steve sat there, his heart racing and his mind reeling from the unexpected encounter. He raised a hand to his cheek, still tingling from Tyraxis' intimate gesture. Did that really just happen? He wondered aloud, a goofy grin spreading across his face. As he continued his route, Steve couldn't shake the image of the alluring alien woman from his thoughts. There was something about her, a magnetic pull that he couldn't resist. He found himself daydreaming about their next encounter, imagining all the adventures they could have together. "Get it together, Reeves," he muttered to himself, shaking his head. "She's just a passenger, nothing more." But deep down he knew that wasn't true. Tyraxis had left a mark on him, both literally and figuratively, and he couldn't wait to see where this unexpected connection might lead. Back at the depot, Steve completed his shift and headed home, his mind still consumed by thoughts of Tyraxis. As he entered his small but cozy apartment, he noticed something on the floor near the entrance, a small metallic object that resembled a flash drive. Curious, he picked it up and examined it closely. Upon closer inspection, he realized it was a business card, emblazoned with Tyraxis' name and contact information. A smile spread across his face as he realized she must have dropped it on the bus during their encounter. "Tyraxis Lesariel," he read aloud, tracing his finger over the embossed letters. "Intergalactic adventurer and freelance troublemaker." Steve's heart raced with excitement and anticipation. He knew he had to reach out to her, to see where this unexpected connection might lead. With a deep breath, he sat down at his computer and began composing a message, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he poured his heart out onto the screen. "Dear Tyraxis," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "I hope this message finds you well. I couldn't help but notice that you left your business card on the bus today, and I couldn't resist the opportunity to reach out." He paused, considering his next words carefully. "I know we only just met, but there was something about our encounter that left a lasting impression on me. Your wit, your charm, your zest for life, it's unlike anything I've ever experienced before." Steve took a deep breath, his heart pounding in his chest. "I guess what I'm trying to say is, I'd love the chance to get to know you better, to explore the universe together, one adventure at a time." He hesitated for a moment, his finger hovering over the send button. Was he being too forward? Too presumptuous? But then he thought back to the way Tyraxis had looked at him, the way she had licked his cheek with such brazen confidence, and he knew he had to take the chance. "If you're interested, I'd love to meet up for a drink sometime. My treat, of course. Just say the word and I'll be there." With a final deep breath, Steve hit send, his heart racing with a mixture of excitement and nerves. He leaned back in his chair, a sense of exhilaration washing over him. The universe had a funny way of bringing people together, and he had a feeling that his journey with Tyraxis was only just beginning. As he closed his eyes, he could almost feel the warmth of her tongue on his cheek, the electricity of her touch. He knew that whatever lay ahead, he was ready for it, ready for the adventure of a lifetime. Steve paced nervously in his apartment, his eyes glued to his phone as he awaited Tyraxis' response. Hours had passed since he sent the message, and with each passing minute, his anxiety grew. Had he been too forward? Too presumptuous? Maybe she wasn't interested in pursuing a connection with a lowly bus driver like him. Just as he was about to give up hope, his phone chimed with an incoming message. His heart racing, Steve unlocked the screen and read the words that would change his life forever. "Steve, I'm so glad you reached out. I couldn't stop thinking about our encounter on the bus. There's something special about you, and I'd love to explore it further. Meet me at the Starlight Lounge tonight at 8 p.m. I'll be waiting. Tyraxis." Steve's heart soared with excitement and relief. She wanted to see him again. He quickly typed out a response, confirming that he would be there, before rushing to get ready for their date. As he showered and shaved, Steve's mind raced with possibilities. What would they talk about? Would the chemistry between them be as strong in person as it was on the bus? He couldn't wait to find out. At precisely 8 p.m., Steve arrived at the Starlight Lounge, a swanky bar in the heart of Neo-Tokyo. The room was dimly lit with plush velvet booths and a stage where a live band played soft jazz music. He scanned the crowd, his eyes searching for the familiar silvery blue skin and vibrant orange hair of Terexis. And then he saw her, sitting alone at a booth in the corner, sipping a neon green cocktail. She looked even more stunning than he remembered, her black dress hugging her curves in all the right places. As he approached, she looked up and smiled, her blue eyes sparkling with mischief. "Steve, you made it," she purred, gesturing for him to sit beside her. "I was starting to think you might have gotten cold feet." Steve slid into the booth, his heart racing at her proximity. "Not a chance," he grinned, signaling the waiter for a drink. "I've been looking forward to this all day." As they sipped their cocktails and chatted, Steve found himself drawn deeper and deeper into Tyraxis's world. She regaled him with stories of her adventures across the galaxy, of the exotic planets she had visited, and the fascinating creatures she had encountered. He listened, enraptured, marveling at her bravery and zest for life. But as the night wore on, Steve couldn't shake the feeling that there was something Tyraxis wasn't telling him. She seemed guarded at times, hesitant to reveal too much about herself. It wasn't until their third round of drinks that she finally let her guard down. "Steve, there's something I need to tell you," she said, her voice low and serious. "Something I didn't mention on the bus." Steve leaned in closer, his curiosity piqued. "What is it, Tyraxis?" "You can tell me anything." Tyraxis took a deep breath, her eyes searching his face for any sign of judgment or rejection. "I'm not just a regular alien adventurer, Steve. I'm a famous pop star. On my home planet, I'm known as the Queen of the Cosmos. My music has touched the lives of millions, and my face is plastered on billboards and magazines across the galaxy." Steve's eyes widened in surprise, his mind reeling with the revelation. A pop star? He had been flirting with a celebrity this whole time? "I know it's a lot to take in," Tyraxis continued, her voice trembling slightly. "And I understand if it changes things between us. But I wanted you to know the truth. I didn't want to start this, whatever this is, with secrets between us." Steve reached out and took her hand, his thumb gently caressing her knuckles. "Tyraxis, I don't care if you're a pop star or a pauper. I'm interested in you for who you are, not what you do. Your celebrity status doesn't change that." Tyraxis's eyes shimmered with emotion, a single tear rolling down her cheek. "You have no idea how much that means to me, Steve. In my world, everyone wants something from me. They see me as a commodity, a product to be consumed. But you see me as a person, as Tyraxis." Steve pulled her into a tight embrace, his heart swelling with affection for this incredible woman. "I'll always see you as Tyraxis," he whispered, his lips brushing against her ear, "no matter what the universe throws at us." As they held each other, the world around them seemed to fade away. The music, the chatter of the other patrons, the clink of glasses, it all disappeared, leaving only the two of them, lost in a moment of pure connection. But their blissful reverie was short-lived. Suddenly, a bright flash of light illuminated the room, followed by the frenzied clicking of cameras. Steve and Tyraxis pulled apart, their eyes wide with shock as they realized they were surrounded by a swarm of paparazzi. "Tyraxis! Tyraxis! Over here!" the photographers shouted, their cameras flashing incessantly. "Who's your new boyfriend? How long have you been dating? Is he an alien too?" Tyraxis grabbed Steve's hand, her eyes wild with panic. "We have to get out of here," she hissed, pulling him towards the exit. "If they find out you're human, it'll be a media circus." Steve followed her lead, his heart pounding, as they pushed through the crowd of photographers and out into the cool night air. They ran hand in hand through the neon-lit streets of Neo-Tokyo, the sound of the paparazzi's footsteps echoing behind them. Finally, they ducked into a narrow alleyway, their chests heaving with exertion. Tyraxis pressed her back against the wall, her eyes closed as she tried to catch her breath. "I'm so sorry, Steve," she panted, her voice thick with emotion. "I never meant for you to get caught up in all of this. My life, it's not normal. It's not easy." Steve cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs gently wiping away the tears that had begun to fall. "Tyraxis, I'm not going anywhere. I knew from the moment I met you that you were special, that our connection was something worth fighting for. And if that means dealing with a little media attention, Then so be it. Tyraxis looked up at him, her eyes shining with a mixture of gratitude and adoration. You're amazing, Steve Reeves. Do you know that? Most guys would have run for the hills by now. Steve grinned, his heart swelling with pride. Well, I'm not most guys. I'm a human, remember? We're known for our bravery and determination. Tyraxis laughed, the sound like music to Steve's ears. That you are, my dear human. That you are. As they stood there in the alleyway, their bodies pressed close together, Steve knew that he was in for the ride of his life. Falling for a famous alien pop star wouldn't be easy, but he was ready for the challenge, ready to stand by Tyraxis' side no matter what the universe threw their way. He leaned in close, his lips hovering just inches from hers. So what do you say, Tyraxis Lezarel? Are you ready for an adventure? Tyraxis smiled, her eyes sparkling with mischief. With you by my side, Steve Reeves, I'm ready for anything. And with that, they sealed their newfound connection with a kiss, the electricity between them crackling like a live wire. The road ahead would be bumpy, but together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would rewrite the stars. The days following their fateful date at the Starlight Lounge were a whirlwind of excitement and chaos for Steve and Tyraxis. News of their relationship had spread like wildfire across the galaxy, with tabloids and gossip sites speculating about the identity of Tyraxis' mysterious new human beau. Steve found himself thrust into the spotlight, his face plastered across every news outlet and social media platform. Overnight, he had become a celebrity in his own right, with paparazzi following his every move and fans clamoring for a glimpse of the man who had stolen the heart of the Queen of the Cosmos. At first, Steve reveled in the attention. It was a far cry from his mundane life as a bus driver, and he couldn't help but feel a thrill every time he saw his name in the headlines. But as the days wore on, the constant scrutiny began to take its toll. He couldn't leave his apartment without being swarmed by photographers, their cameras flashing in his face and their questions shouted at him from every angle. His phone buzzed incessantly with messages from reporters, fans, and even long-lost relatives who had suddenly taken an interest in his life. But the worst part was the toll it was taking on his relationship with Tyraxis. With her busy schedule and the constant media attention, it was nearly impossible for them to find a moment of privacy. Every date, every stolen kiss, every intimate moment was captured by the relentless paparazzi, splashed across the front pages for all the world to see. Steve could see the strain it was putting on Tyraxis, the way her shoulders tensed every time they stepped out in public, the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. He knew that she was used to the attention, that it came with the territory of being a famous pop star, but he couldn't help but feel guilty for adding to her burden. One evening, as they sat in Tyraxis' penthouse apartment, the curtains drawn tightly against the prying eyes of the world, Steve finally broached the subject. Tyraxis, I don't know if I can do this anymore, he said softly, his eyes downcast. The constant attention, the lack of privacy, it's too much. I feel like I'm losing myself in all of this. Tyraxis reached out and took his hand, her eyes shining with understanding. I know, Steve, and I'm so sorry for putting you through this. I never wanted my fame to come between us. Steve looked up at her, his heart aching at the sadness in her eyes. It's not your fault, Tyraxis. I knew what I was getting into when I fell for you. I don't know if I'm cut out for this life. Tyraxis was silent for a moment, her gaze distant as she considered his words. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft but determined. Steve, I love you, and I'm not going to let the media or anyone else come between us. We'll figure this out together, I promise. Steve felt a surge of emotion at her words, his heart swelling with love and gratitude. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close as he breathed in her familiar scent. I love you too, Tyraxis, more than anything in this universe. They stayed like that for a long moment, their bodies intertwined as they drew strength from each other's presence. But their peaceful reverie was shattered by a sudden pounding on the door, followed by a muffled shout. Tyraxis, open up! It's Zorgan! Tyraxis pulled away from Steve, her eyes wide with surprise. Zorgan? What's he doing here? She crossed the room and opened the door, revealing a tall, slender alien with green skin and a shock of purple hair. He was dressed in a sleek, black suit, his eyes hidden behind a pair of dark sunglasses. Tyraxis, we need to talk. Zorgan said, his voice low and urgent. "It's about your boyfriend." Steve felt a chill run down his spine at the alien's words. He stood up, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "What about me?" Zorgan glanced at him, his expression unreadable. "It's not safe for you here, human. You need to leave, now." Taraxis stepped forward, her eyes flashing with anger. "What are you talking about, Zorgan? Steve is my boyfriend, and he's not going anywhere." Zorgan shook his head, his voice growing more insistent. "You don't understand, Tyraxis. There are forces at work here, forces that want to see you fail. And they'll stop at nothing to get what they want, even if it means hurting the ones you love." Steve felt a surge of fear at the alien's words, his mind racing with possibilities. Who could be after him, and why? Taraxis seemed to be thinking the same thing, her brow furrowed with concern. "What forces, Zorgan? What aren't you telling me?" Zorgan glanced around the room, as if checking for hidden cameras or listening devices. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "It's your manager, Taraxis. He's been working with a group of obsessive fans, feeding them information about your relationship with Steve. They're planning something big. And if we don't stop them, it could mean the end of everything you've worked for." Taraxis' face paled at his words, her hand flying to her mouth in shock. "My manager? But why would he do that? He's supposed to be on my side." Zorgan shook his head, his expression grim. "He thinks that your relationship with a human is bad for your image, that it could damage your career. He's willing to do whatever it takes to keep you at the top, even if it means sacrificing your happiness." Steve felt a surge of anger at the alien's words, his fists clenching tighter at his sides. "So what do we do? How do we stop them?" Zorgan turned to him, his expression softening slightly. "We need to get you out of here, Steve. Somewhere safe where they can't find you. And then we need to come up with a plan to expose your manager and the obsessive fans before they can do any more damage." Taraxis nodded, her eyes shining with determination. "Zorgan is right, Steve. We need to keep you safe no matter what. I won't let anyone hurt you because of me." Steve hesitated for a moment, his heart torn between his love for Taraxis and his fear for his own safety. But as he looked into her eyes, he knew that he would follow her to the ends of the universe, no matter the risk. "Okay," he said finally, his voice steady. "Let's do this. Together." Taraxis smiled at him, her hand reaching out to take his. "Together," she echoed, her voice filled with love and resolve. And with that, they set out into the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They knew that the road would be difficult, that they would have to fight for their love every step of the way. But they also knew that they had each other, and that was enough to give them the strength to carry on. As they left the apartment hand in hand, Steve couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement mingled with the fear. He was about to embark on the adventure of a lifetime with the woman he loved by his side. And no matter what the universe threw their way, he knew that they would face it together, united by the power of their love. Steve paced the length of Zorgan's hidden safe house, his mind racing with thoughts of Taraxis and the danger she now faced. He had been reluctant to leave her side, but Zorgan had insisted that it was the only way to keep him safe while they planned their next move. "We can't just sit here and do nothing," Steve said, his voice tight with frustration. "Taraxis is out there, facing her manager alone. We need to be there for her, to support her." Zorgan looked up from the holographic display he had been studying, his expression grim. "I understand your concerns, Steve, but we need to be smart about this. Taraxis' manager is a powerful man with connections that run deep in the entertainment industry. If we make one wrong move, it could be disastrous for both of you." Steve ran a hand through his hair, his jaw clenched with determination. "Then we need to come up with a plan, and fast. We can't let that scumbag get away with this." Zorgan nodded, his eyes glinting with a newfound respect for the human. "You're right, and I think I might have an idea." He tapped a few commands into the holographic display, bringing up a series of images and documents. "I've been doing some digging into Tyraxis' manager's background, and I think I've found something we can use against him." Steve leaned in closer, his eyes scanning the information on the screen. "What is it?" Zorgan pointed to a particular document, his voice low and conspiratorial. "It's a record of a secret bank account, one that Tyraxis' manager has been using to funnel money from her earnings. He's been skimming off the top for years, lining his own pockets while Taraxis works herself to the bone. Steve felt a surge of anger at the revelation, his fists clenching at his sides. That bastard! We have to expose him, make him pay for what he's done. Zorgon nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Exactly, and I think I know just how to do it. He tapped a few more commands into the display, bringing up a series of messages and emails. I've been monitoring Taraxis' manager's communications, and it looks like he's planning a big meeting with some of the obsessive fans he's been working with. If we can infiltrate that meeting and record what he says, we'll have all the evidence we need to take him down. Steve felt a thrill of excitement at the prospect, his heart racing with adrenaline. Let's do it. Let's take this scumbag down and make him regret ever messing with Taraxis. Zorgon grinned, his eyes glinting with mischief. I like the way you think, human. Let's get to work. Over the next few hours, Steve and Zorgon worked tirelessly to plan their infiltration of the meeting. They pored over blueprints and security protocols, devising a way to slip in undetected and record the incriminating evidence they needed. As they worked, Steve couldn't help but feel a growing sense of admiration for the green-skinned alien. Despite his initial reservations about Zorgon, he had proven himself to be a valuable ally with a sharp mind and a fierce loyalty to Taraxis. Finally, as the twin suns of Neo-Tokyo began to set over the horizon, they were ready. Steve stood before a mirror, adjusting the sleek black suit that Zorgon had procured for him. He hardly recognized himself. The once humble bus driver now transformed into a suave and sophisticated infiltrator. You clean up nice, human, Zorgon said, admiring Steve's reflection with a nod of approval. You're going to fit right in at that meeting. Steve took a deep breath, steeling himself for the task ahead. Let's hope so, for Taraxis' sake. With that, they set out into the neon-lit streets of Neo-Tokyo, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. They knew that the stakes were high, that one false move could spell disaster for both Taraxis and Steve, but they also knew that they had no choice but to press forward, to fight for the love that had brought them together against all odds. As they approached the towering skyscraper where the meeting was set to take place, Steve felt a sudden surge of doubt. What if they were walking into a trap? What if Taraxis' manager had somehow gotten wind of their plan? But then he thought of Taraxis, of the way her eyes had shone with love and trust as she looked at him. He thought of the way she had stood by him, even in the face of unimaginable pressure and scrutiny. And he knew that he would do whatever it took to protect her, to keep her safe from the forces that sought to tear them apart. With a deep breath, Steve stepped forward, as Zorgon at his side. They flashed their forged credentials at the security guard, their hearts pounding as they waited for the inevitable challenge. But to their surprise, the guard merely waved them through, his eyes glazed with boredom and disinterest. As they made their way through the opulent lobby and into the elevators, Steve couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Everything was going according to plan, almost too smoothly. But he pushed the thought aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. Finally, they reached the top floor, the doors sliding open to reveal a dimly lit conference room. Taraxis' manager sat at the head of the table, surrounded by a group of shadowy figures that Steve could only assume were the obsessive fans Zorgon had warned him about. Gentlemen, the manager said, his voice dripping with false sincerity, thank you for coming. I know that you're all concerned about Taraxis' recent dalliance with that human, but I assure you I have the situation under control. Steve felt a surge of anger at the manager's words, his fists clenching at his sides, but he forced himself to remain calm, to play the role of the unassuming assistant as he and Zorgon took their seats at the back of the room. As you know, the manager continued, Taraxis' image is everything. She's the queen of the cosmos, the face of the galactic music industry, and we can't let anything tarnish that image, not even a fleeting romance with a lowly bus driver. The fans murmured their agreement, their eyes glinting with a fanatical light. Steve felt a chill run down his spine at the sight of them, at the depths of their obsession with Taraxis. Which is why, the manager said, his voice growing more insistent, we need to take action. We need to remove this human from the equation by any means necessary. Steve's heart skipped a beat at the manager's words, his mind racing with the implications. They were planning to hurt him, to remove him from Taraxis' life, like some kind of unwanted blemish. But before he could react, Zorgon was on his feet, his voice ringing out through the room like a thunderclap. "I'm afraid we can't let you do that, sir." The manager's head snapped up, his eyes widening in surprise and anger. "Who the hell are you?" "Security." But Zorgon merely smiled, his hand reaching into his pocket to reveal a small recording device. "I'm someone who knows the truth about your little scheme, and I have all the evidence I need to expose you for the fraud you are." The manager's face paled, his eyes darting around the room in a panic. "You're bluffing. You have nothing." Steve stood up, his voice steady and confident. "Oh, we have plenty. Enough to send you to prison for a very long time." He held up his own recording device, the red light blinking steadily as it captured every word of the manager's incriminating speech. "It's over, you bastard. You're finished." The manager's face contorted with rage, his fist slamming down on the table. "You think you can threaten me, human? I'll destroy you, and that little alien whore you love so much." But Steve merely smiled, his eyes glinting with a fierce determination. "You can try, but I won't let you hurt Tyraxis. Not now, not ever. She's the love of my life, and I'll fight for her until my last breath." With that, he and Zorgon turned to leave, their hearts pounding with the thrill of victory. They had done it. They had exposed Tyraxis' manager for the snake he was, and ensured that he would never be able to hurt her again. As they stepped out into the cool night air, Steve felt a sudden rush of emotion, his eyes stinging with unshed tears. He had faced his fears, had stood up for the woman he loved, and had emerged victorious. And he knew that, no matter what challenges lay ahead, he and Tyraxis would face them together, united by the unbreakable bond of their love. The days following the confrontation with Tyraxis' manager were a whirlwind of chaos and confusion. News of the manager's corrupt practices spread like wildfire through the galactic media, dominating the headlines and sparking a frenzy of speculation and gossip. At first, Steve and Tyraxis were hailed as heroes, their love story celebrated as a triumph of the human spirit over the machinations of the alien elite. But as the days wore on, a new narrative began to emerge, one that painted Steve in a far less flattering light. It started with a series of anonymous tips to the media, whispers of Steve's checkered past and questionable motives. Rumors began to circulate that he was nothing more than a gold digger, a manipulative opportunist who had used his charm and good looks to bewitch Tyraxis and gain access to her fortune. As the rumors grew more insistent, Steve found himself at the center of a media firestorm, his every move scrutinized and dissected by the tabloids. Paparazzi followed him everywhere he went, their cameras flashing in his face as they shouted accusations and demands for comment. Through it all, Tyraxis remained steadfast in her support of Steve, her love for him unwavering in the face of the mounting pressure. But even she couldn't shield him from the toll the scandal was taking on his mental health, the constant barrage of negativity and suspicion wearing him down day by day. One evening, as they sat together in Tyraxis' penthouse watching the latest news report on the scandal, Steve finally reached his breaking point. He stood up abruptly, his fists clenched at his sides as he paced the room in agitation. "I can't take this anymore, Tyraxis," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "I can't stand by and watch as they tear me apart, as they try to destroy everything we built together." Tyraxis rose to her feet, her eyes shining with concern as she reached out to take his hand. "Steve, my love, I know it's hard, but we can't let them win. We have to stay strong, to fight back against their lies and manipulation." Steve shook his head, his jaw set with determination. "No, Tyraxis, I have to do more than that. I have to confront your manager directly, to expose him for the snake he is once and for all." Tyraxis' eyes widened in alarm, her grip on his hand tightening. "Steve, no, it's too dangerous. He's a powerful man, with connections that run deep. He could hurt you, or worse." But Steve merely smiled, his eyes glinting with a fierce resolve. "I'm not afraid of him, Tyraxis. I'm not afraid of anything, as long as I have you by my side." He pulled her into his arms, his lips brushing against her forehead in a tender kiss. "I have to do this, my love. For you, for us, for everything we believe in." Tyraxis hesitated for a moment, her eyes searching his face for any sign of doubt or fear. But all she saw was love, pure and unwavering, and she knew that she could not stand in his way. Okay, she said softly, her voice trembling with emotion. But promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you'll come back to me. Steve smiled, his hand cupping her cheek as he gazed into her eyes. I promise, Tyraxis, I will always come back to you. With that, he turned and strode out of the penthouse, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. He knew that he was walking into the lion's den, that he was about to face the man who had tried to destroy him and everything he held dear. But he also knew that he had no choice, that he had to confront the darkness head-on if he ever hoped to emerge into the light. As he made his way through the neon-lit streets of Neo-Tokyo, Steve's mind raced with thoughts of Tyraxis, of the love they had fought so hard to protect. He thought of the way she had looked at him, the trust and devotion shining in her eyes, and he knew that he would do whatever it took to keep her safe. Finally, he arrived at the towering skyscraper that housed Tyraxis's former manager's office, his heart pounding as he stepped into the gleaming lobby. He ignored the curious stares of the receptionist as he made his way to the elevators, his hand clenched tightly around the recording device in his pocket. As the doors slid open on the top floor, Steve took a deep breath, steeling himself for the confrontation to come. He strode down the hallway, his footsteps echoing on the polished marble, until he reached the door to the manager's office. Without hesitation, he pushed the door open, his eyes narrowing as he took in the sight of the man who had caused him so much pain. The manager sat behind his desk, his face a mask of smug satisfaction as he regarded Steve with a condescending smirk. Well, 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 he said, his voice dripping with disdain. If it isn't the little human who thinks he can play with the big boys? Steve felt a surge of anger at the manager's words, his fists clenching at his sides, but he forced himself to remain calm, to keep his voice steady as he spoke. I'm not here to play games, he said, his eyes locked on the manager's face. I'm here to expose you for the fraud you are, to show the world the true depths of your corruption and greed. The manager laughed, a cold, mirthless sound that sent a chill down Steve's spine. You really think you can take me down, human? You're nothing but a pawn in a game you can't even begin to understand. Steve shook his head, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. That's where you're wrong. I understand perfectly well what's going on here. You're a man who's so consumed by his own ego, his own desire for power and control, that he's willing to destroy anyone who gets in his way. He took a step forward, his voice growing louder as he spoke. But you made a mistake when you tried to destroy me and Tyraxis. You underestimated the power of our love, the strength of our bond. And now you're going to pay the price for your arrogance. The manager's face twisted with rage, his fist slamming down on the desk as he rose to his feet. You dare to threaten me, human? I'll crush you like the insect you are. But Steve merely smiled, his hand reaching into his pocket to pull out the recording device. I don't think so. You see, I have all the evidence I need to expose your true nature, to show the world the kind of man you really are. He pressed the button on the device, the sound of the manager's own voice filling the room. The manager's face paled as he listened to his own words. His own incriminating statements played back to him in damning detail. It's over, Steve said, his voice calm and confident. Your days of manipulation and deceit are finished. You'll never be able to hurt Tyraxis or anyone else ever again. The manager's face contorted with rage, his hand reaching for the blaster at his side. But before he could draw the weapon, Steve was on him, his fist connecting with the manager's jaw in a satisfying crunch. The manager stumbled back, his eyes wide with shock and pain as he clutched at his shattered jaw. Steve stood over him, his chest heaving with exertion as he regarded the fallen man with a mixture of pity and contempt. You had your chance, he said, his voice low and steady. You could have been a force for good in this universe, could have used your power and influence to make a difference, but instead you chose to wallow in your own greed and selfishness, to destroy anyone who dared to stand in your way. He turned to leave, his hand reaching for the door. But before he could step through, he paused, his voice softening as he spoke. I hope you find peace someday, he said, his eyes meeting the manager's in a final piercing gaze. I hope you learn to let go of your anger and your hate, to find the love and compassion that Tyraxis and I share. Because in the end, that's all that really matters. With that, he stepped out into the hallway, his heart pounding with a thrill of victory, He had done it, had faced down the darkness and emerged triumphant, his love for Taraxis burning brighter than ever in the face of their shared adversity. As he made his way back to the penthouse, back to the woman he loved more than life itself, Steve knew that their journey was far from over. There would be more challenges to face, more obstacles to overcome, but he also knew that they would face them together, united by the unbreakable bond of their love. And in that moment, as he stepped into Taraxis' waiting arms, he knew that he had found his true purpose in life, his reason for being. He had found his home, his heart, his everything, and he would never let her go. In the weeks following the manager's downfall, Steve and Taraxis found themselves thrust into the spotlight once again. Their love story celebrated as a triumph of the human spirit over the forces of greed and corruption. Media outlets across the galaxy clamored for interviews, eager to hear the tale of the humble bus driver who had won the heart of the Queen of the Cosmos. At first, the couple was hesitant to engage with the media, their desire for privacy and normalcy outweighing their sense of obligation to their fans. But as the requests continued to pour in, they realized that they had an opportunity to use their platform for good, to spread a message of love and unity in a universe that often seemed divided and broken. And so, with Steve's encouragement and support, Taraxis began to speak out, using her music and her words to advocate for change and progress in the galactic community. She spoke of the need for greater transparency and accountability in the entertainment industry, for fair treatment of artists and creators regardless of their species or background. Her message resonated with fans across the galaxy, sparking a movement that spread like wildfire through the stars. And through it all, Steve remained by her side, his love and devotion unwavering in the face of the challenges and obstacles that lay ahead. But even as they worked to change the world around them, Steve and Taraxis knew that they had their own journey to embark upon, a future to build together that transcended the boundaries of species and culture. It started with a simple conversation, a quiet moment stolen away from the chaos and noise of their public lives. They lay together in bed, their bodies intertwined, as they gazed out at the stars that twinkled beyond the window of their penthouse suite. "Steve," Taraxis said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "have you ever thought about starting a family?" Steve felt his heart skip a beat at her words, his mind racing with the possibilities and challenges that lay ahead. He knew that the biological differences between humans and aliens presented unique obstacles, that the path to parenthood would not be an easy one. But as he looked into Taraxis' eyes, saw the love and longing that shone within them, he knew that there was no obstacle too great, no challenge too daunting, that could stand in the way of their love. "Of course I have," he said, his hand reaching out to cup her cheek. "I want nothing more than to build a life with you, Taraxis, to create a family that is a testament to the power of our love, to the beauty and diversity of the universe we live in." Taraxis' eyes shimmered with tears, her heart swelling with emotion at his words. "Oh, Steve, I want that too, more than anything. But I know it won't be easy. There are so many barriers and so many prejudices that we'll have to overcome." Steve smiled, his thumb brushing away the tears that had begun to fall down her cheeks. "I know, my love, but we've faced challenges before, and we've always come out stronger for it. Our love is a force that cannot be denied, a light that will guide us through even the darkest of times." And so, with renewed determination and purpose, Steve and Taraxis began to plan for their future, to seek out the knowledge and resources they would need to bring their dreams of a family to fruition. They met with doctors and scientists, with experts in the field of interspecies reproduction, their minds and hearts open to the possibilities that lay before them. It was a journey that tested them in ways they had never been tested before, a gauntlet of physical and emotional challenges that pushed them to the brink of their endurance. But through it all, they clung to each other, their love a beacon of hope and strength in the face of adversity. And then, after months of preparation and perseverance, the day finally arrived. Taraxis lay in a hospital bed, her hand clutched tightly in Steve's as she labored to bring their child into the world. It was a moment of pure joy and wonder, a testament to the power of their love and the miracle of life itself. As Steve held their newborn daughter in his arms, her tiny face scrunched up in a yawn as she nestled into his chest, he felt a wave of emotion wash over him, a love so fierce and all-consuming that it took his breath away. He looked down at Taraxis, saw the tears of happiness that streamed down her face, and knew that he had found his true purpose in life, his reason for being. "She's perfect," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "Our little miracle, our beautiful daughter." Taraxis smiled, her hand reaching out to stroke the soft, downy hair that covered their daughter's head. "She is, isn't she? A symbol of our love, of the hope and promise that exists in this universe." And as they gazed down at their child, the product of their love and devotion, Steve and Taraxis knew that they had embarked upon the greatest adventure of their lives, a journey that would take them to the farthest reaches of the galaxy and beyond. In the years that followed, their family grew and flourished, their love a constant source of strength and inspiration to all who knew them. They faced challenges and obstacles, as all families do, but they faced them together, united by the unbreakable bond of their love. And through it all, they never forgot the moment that had brought them together, the chance encounter on a crowded bus that had set them on the path to destiny. It was a story they told their children and grandchildren, a tale of love and courage, of the power of the human spirit to overcome even the greatest of odds. And as they look back on their lives, on the journey that had brought them to this moment, Steve and Taraxis knew that they had been blessed beyond measure, that they had found a love that transcended the stars themselves. "I love you, Taraxis Lezariel," Steve whispered, his forehead pressed against hers as they stood on the balcony of their home, the stars twinkling above them in the night sky. "More than life itself, more than anything in this universe, or any other." Taraxis smiled, her eyes shining with the light of 1,000 suns. "And I love you, Steve Reeves. My heart, my soul, my everything." And with those words, they sealed their love with a kiss, a promise of forever that would echo through the ages, a testament to the power of the human spirit and the boundless possibilities of the universe itself.